Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into a topic today that I think a lot of us can relate to, self-discovery, and how it kind of like intertwines with our relationships or even, the lack of them,
Yeah, it's a really interesting dance, isn't it? Between who we are on our own and how that kind of plays out in our connections with other people.
for sure. So we're looking at some excerpts from this document today,
Mm.
and one quote really stood out to me right away. It said, "If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of someone else." Does that resonate with you at all? It seems kind of simple at first, but then
Oh, totally.
yeah,
It's one of those things, right? Like on the surface, it's straightforward, but then when you really think about it, it makes you wonder about a lot of things.
that does. And
Yeah.
it's like, is it really possible to show up for someone else if you haven't really figured out how to do that for yourself first?
Yeah, that's a big one. And psychologically speaking, we are like hardwired for connection. It's just part of being human. But this quote makes you think about where that need for connection overlaps with like our sense of self.
Right. Like, are we coming into a relationship as a whole person, or are we looking for someone to kind of fill in the gaps?
Totally. And this document actually presents a few different perspectives on this, which is always interesting to consider.
It is. So what are some of those different viewpoints?
Well, on one hand, there's this idea that when we feel loved and valued by others, it like boosts our self-esteem, that external validation can be really powerful, right?
It can. Like, we're being told we're worthy of love, so then we believe it.
Exactly. But then there's this other perspective that's kind of gaining traction. The idea that being single and having that time to yourself is actually this amazing opportunity for self-discovery, and that it can lead to a more, I don't know, like resilient sense of self-worth that comes from within.
Right. It's like that whole you have to love yourself before you can love someone else thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, we live in a world where the message is often like being in a relationship is the ultimate goal. It's kind of hard not to internalize that sometimes.
Oh, for sure. It's like every time you go to a family gathering, it's like the questions start flying. Are you seeing anyone? When are you getting married?
I know, right? The pressure is real. It can definitely make you question things. But, I find this whole idea of singlehood as this like breeding ground for self-discovery. That's really fascinating to me. And the document actually goes into some pretty compelling arguments about this.
Okay, I'm all ears. So what makes being single such a good time for personal growth, according to this document, that is?
Okay, so one of the biggest things is just the freedom it gives you, You have the space to really look inward and figure out what's important to you, what your values are, all without having to constantly compromise or negotiate with a partner.
Like, you can finally hear your own inner compass without someone else's directions drowning it out.
Exactly. And from that clarity, you're in a better place to make decisions that truly align with what you want and to go after your goals without those constraints that a relationship can sometimes bring.
So it's not about, like, saying one is better than the other, but recognizing that being single lets you focus your energy on your own growth in a way that maybe being partnered doesn't.
Yeah.
But isn't there a lot of research on how tough it can be to be single?
Yeah.
Dealing with loneliness, the pressure from society. Wouldn't all that make it harder to, work on self-development?
Yeah, I mean, being single definitely has its
Yeah.
challenges. Like the research even mentions that, right? Some people really struggle with loneliness or feeling like they don't fit in because society kind of tells us we should be coupled up.
Right, right.
But there's this other side to it too that I thought was super interesting. The document talks about how actually single people often end up having these like wider social circles, more friends, and closer connections too.
Oh, really? That's kind of surprising. Why would that be?
Well, it kind of makes sense if you think about it. When you don't have a partner, you might put more effort into staying close with your friends, and your family too, maybe even building community in other ways.
So it's like you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So you end up with this richer, more diverse group of people in your life.
Exactly. And that can be like really valuable for personal growth, right? Having all those different perspectives, different experiences to learn from.
Yeah, it's like you're constantly being challenged and exposed to new ways of thinking, which I guess can only be a good thing in the long run.
Totally. And the document even suggests that this might be why single people are often more proactive about staying healthy, like taking care of themselves physically.
Interesting. Like, they're not relying on a partner to validate them, so they're more likely to do it for themselves.
Yeah, they're building that self-worth from within, which is really powerful.
It is. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about how being single can be this time for like really deep self-discovery.
Yeah.
But what about the flip side? What about relationships?
Right, right.
This document doesn't make it seem like being in a relationship is a bad thing for growth, does it?
Not at all. It's not about saying one is better than the other, really. It's just about, recognizing how both experiences, single or coupled up, can shape us in different ways. And the document actually talks about some really cool ways that being in a relationship can help you grow as a person.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more. How so?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest things is just having that built-in support system, Like when things get tough, having a partner to lean on can make a huge difference.
Yeah, like having a teammate.
Totally. Someone to help you through those challenges and celebrate the wins with, too, of course.
And I imagine that kind of support can also, like, empower you to go after what you want in life, too.
Absolutely. Knowing you've got someone in your corner believing in you, even when you doubt yourself, that can give you such a boost.
So it's not just about comfort. It's about, like, pushing each other to be better.
Yeah, exactly. And there's even research on this. Like the document talks about this psychologist, Dr. Leslie Becker Phelps, and her work shows that people in relationships tend to be healthier overall. They have better habits, and they even recover from things like surgeries faster. There were these studies done at Emory and Rutgers that showed that.
Wow, I actually remember when I had that awful flu a few years back, just having my partner there to, like, make me soup and stuff, it made a world of difference. It's amazing how much that emotional support can impact us physically too, right?
It really is. And we can't forget about just having that person to really talk to, someone who listens without judgment and just gets you. That's so important for dealing with stress and just navigating life.
Yeah, for sure. Although, let's be real, relationships aren't always easy. There's bound to be some disagreements, compromises, even a few arguments here and there.
Oh, definitely. No relationship is perfect. And learning to navigate those differences, that's all part of it.
This document mentioned something about, like, the things couples often have to compromise on. What were some of those?
Let me see. Oh, yeah, like where to live. That's a big one, right? Deciding where to put down roots and then like how to spend free time. Finances, definitely finances.
Those are all biggies.
Yeah.
But isn't that, like, part of what helps us grow? Learning to see things from another perspective, finding that common ground.
100%. Relationships challenge us to confront our own biases,
Mhm.
and to just be more understanding, more empathetic, and to like think about the we without losing sight of the me.
It's like that saying, you don't really know someone until you've traveled with them. I feel like that applies to relationships in general, too. You learn so much about yourself when you're figuring things out alongside a partner, the good and the bad, right?
Oh, totally. The good, the bad, and everything in between. It's how we learn. And yes, sometimes it's messy, but it's all part of the growth process, right?
It sounds like it's not about picking a winner,
No.
singlehood or relationships.
Yeah.
Right? They both have their own unique advantages, right?
Totally. It's about recognizing what each brings to the table in terms of like who we become. And this document really highlighted that, I thought. It's not about saying one is better, just that they both come with different opportunities and, different challenges too, of course.
For sure. Speaking of which, there was this Oscar Wilde quote in this document that really stuck with me. He said, "I think it's very healthy to spend time alone. You need to know how to be alone and not defined by another person."
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And it's like, no matter what your relationship status is, that's important, right? Being comfortable with yourself.
Absolutely. And it's cool to see how that idea kind of pops up in the expert opinions that are mentioned in this document. They all seem to agree on how important it is to be self-aware and like find fulfillment on your own terms, regardless of your relationship status.
Right, like those researchers we talked about, Rogers, Zarabi, and Schmerling. What were their views again? Could you remind me?
Yeah, so Rogers, he was all about how like happiness in relationships is really personal. Some people thrive in a partnership, with others feel more fulfilled on their own. There's no right answer.
It's about tuning into yourself then.
Right.
Figuring out what works for you.
Exactly. And Zarabi, her work focused on singlehood and how it can be this time for real transformation, for like looking inward, figuring out who you are and trying new things and doing it all without a partner's influence.
You're free to, like, write your own story.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Schmerling, who brings us back to the idea that, yeah, relationships can be good for our well-being, like we talked about earlier, but it's not guaranteed, right? In the end, whether you're single or coupled up, creating a fulfilling life, it comes down to taking care of yourself, building healthy connections, just prioritizing your own well-being.
So it always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Taking care of yourself first. Like, that's the foundation for everything else.
I think so. No matter what your relationship status is, that's key.
This has been such an interesting conversation. Really got me thinking. There was this one question from the document that I wanted to get your take on before we wrap up.
Yeah.
It was from this Russell Thackeray, and he asked, like, can someone else really complete us?
Ooh, that's a big one, right? Like, can another person really fill in those missing pieces? Or is it more about finding that wholeness within ourselves first so we can show up in a relationship as our full selves? It's something to think about, isn't it?
It really is. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered so much, from being self-reliant to how relationships shape us. It's complex, and there's no easy answers, which is kind of how most things in life are. But if you're as intrigued by all of this as we are, keep thinking about it. Maybe even check out the source material yourself and see what stands out to you. That's what we're all about here, getting curious and exploring these ideas together. Until next time.